All right, welcome back. Oh shoot, you're already timing me? Okay, so we're doing this thing where Caleb is timing me on this video because I'm tired of you sending me 3 hours of raw footage. So he's giving me 2 minutes per section on this. Let's see if I can explain to you why making $500 an hour made me broke in under 12 minutes. In under 12 minutes. I'm nervous, the pressure's on.
He won't make it. Excuse me, this isn't exactly what I had in mind.
So about 1.5 years ago, I was still working a full-time job, and I talk about this all over the channel. I talk about how I was making $110,000 a year. And that was a really comfortable living for us because, you know, we were making 6 figures, but on the flip side of this, we were living in Los Angeles, California, where that's a little bit closer to the average salary out there. So while me and my wife were both making our own salaries and we were comfortable, we were doing fine, but we weren't rolling in it. And for me, my whole life, I've always been looking for ways to make more money. I've always been the hustler in my group. Like, people have always known me as the guy that's always trying to figure out how to make more money, how to get a good deal, how to get a free meal. And you know, for me, I was always just looking for opportunities and side hustles that would make me an extra $50, $100, $200 on the side. And I would say over the course of my lifetime, I've probably pursued between 20 and 30 side hustles, and a couple of them that have actually come into fruition and really just turned into my overall livelihood.
For 82 years, I've been an oil man.
I am a semi-professional race car driver and an amateur tattoo artist.
I am a Japanese messy boy.
Hit me up with a shrimp.
One of these side hustles obviously being Airbnb, which grew into more of a full-time job for me. But another side hustle that I started when I started my YouTube channel was consulting. I thought, well, hey, I'm putting out all this free content. People are sending me emails all the time asking me to pick my brain. People were leaving me comments, friends were sending me text messages, and I was happy to do it, right? I was happy to just give my time out and help people in any way that I could, but it got to the point where I was really starting to feel like I was drowning underwater with my time because I was still working a full-time job. And I remember a friend of mine reached out to me. He was a YouTuber. He said, hey man, I think you could use a little help on the YouTube side. You want to set up a chat? And I was like, yeah, I would love that, because I think at that time I had maybe 25,000 subs and he had like 110,000. I was like, that'd be amazing, man. Yeah, do you want to do Zoom? Do you want to meet for coffee? And he was like, yeah, actually, I'd have to charge you $150 an hour as a consultation fee. And I was like, oh, that's cool. You reached out to me, but all right, I thought we were friends. And I was like, yeah, let me think about it. And I didn't take him up on it because I thought that was a weird way to approach me as a client. But what it did inspire at that time was that someone could sell an hour of their time and their expertise for a monetary figure. And thus that gave way to my consultation business, where I would book an hour of my time and I would promote it on YouTube, put my link down there. People could book me for an hour.
If you feel like you need further consultation, I actually do tiny house permitting consultations now on the side.
And I was extremely excited because I started out charging $150 an hour. And so as that developed, I was actually getting booked, you know, once or twice a week when I started. And I was like, oh my God, I'm making $300 extra a week. That's an extra $1,200 a month. That's an extra $14,000 a year. And I was so excited because this side hustle was actually starting to work. And then before I knew it, I was getting booked 3 to 4 times a week, and then 3 to 4 times a day, and then 5 times a day. And just for clarity, I was consulting people on how to start their Airbnb businesses, how to build tiny homes, how to build houses in Joshua Tree, just the general Airbnb launchpad, if you will. And one of my clients was actually a consultant for a software company that he started. He said, hey man, let me tell you something. You're not charging enough money, and if you're booked at 100% capacity, you're charging too little, and you should only ever be booked 60% of your available slots. And so with that advice, I kept upping my rate. And so I went from $150 an hour to $200 to $250 to $300 to $350, $400, all the way up to $500, which is the final rate that I ended up on my consulting journey. And then it turned into $500 an hour booked 1 month in advance. And things were going really, really, really good. Things were going so good that I made the decision to quit my 6-figure career to become a full-time consultant.
This video is actually coming out on the very last day of my advertising career.
Because I realized very quickly that at $500 an hour, I could work a few hours a week and make more than I was making at my job. I was making 10 times more consulting, so I could work up to 9 times less and make a comparable living, but obviously I wanted to really ramp up the consulting side and make as much money as possible. And things were going really, really great. But there was one problem, and it's that there was only one of me, and I only had a certain amount of time that I could book out, and I quickly started realizing that there was really only so much money that I could ever make. make. Let's just math this out at my starting point of $150 an hour. If I was doing that consistently, full-time, 40 hours a week for the entire year, that comes out to about $300,000 a year. $500 an hour, which is where I ended, full-time, back-to-back meetings, no breaks, for an entire year comes out to $1 million a year, which sounds really great, right? $1 million a year. I can make $1 million a year consulting. Why the heck wouldn't I want to do that? And that's all good and gravy. Like, if you're fine with that, if you're fine with $300,000 a year or $1 million a year, you can live a very comfortable life on that salary. I mean, I certainly was. I was finally making a little bit of extra money, and we were able to finally, go out to a restaurant and add the avocado on our salad for $1.50 without having to really, cringe so much that we were spending the extra cash. But that doesn't really work if you're an entrepreneur, because if you're an entrepreneur, your constant struggle and your constant chase in life is really to grow something and to make more money, right? To grow a company, to grow a product that is scalable and allows you to make more and more and more money every single year. So for me, I started having this realization because I was just so spread thin, and I just realized, like, I can't book any more of my time. Even if I want to make more money, I can't. And I don't think people are going to be willing to book me out for more than $500 an hour, which ended up being wrong there too. But we'll talk about that some other time. What it all boils down to is that there's no way to scale yourself past a certain point when you're selling your time. You only have 24 hours in a day. Obviously, you can't work 24 hours a day. Maybe if you're really pushing yourself and you're really straining yourself, you can work 12 hours a day. That becomes unhealthy. And so really, if you're trying to maintain a 40-hour-a-week work week, you can only work 8 hours a day. And so no matter what your hourly rate is, that's going to cap out at a certain point. It did for me, not necessarily from a financial standpoint. I had more time and room to keep booking myself out, but from a mental perspective, I started getting a little burnt out. And here's another really big issue I had with consulting and selling my time and all that kind of stuff, and it's that you can't really take a vacation. I mean, if you're an hourly employee to yourself, if you're selling an hour of your time, whether it's $150 an hour, $500, $1,000, or $2,000, if you don't work, if you don't give that time to the client that you're consulting to, or however else you're selling your service, maybe you're a plumber, maybe you're an electrician, maybe you're a freelance software developer, it doesn't really matter, but if you aren't there to work those hours, you cannot make that money. And obviously you can work on vacation, but what fun is that, right? And so I started to quickly realize that yes, the money was really good, but I was still sort of in the same prison that I was in with the W-2 world, right? Whereas in the W-2 world, I had the golden handcuffs of a stable job and, health insurance and a 401k match, but I was bound by that employer and beholden to them to do the tasks that they asked me to do. But from a consulting standpoint, it was also golden handcuffs of a really nice hourly rate. But if I didn't let someone book me out and I didn't give them my time and attention, then I couldn't get paid. And this was really one of my biggest gripes with this business model, was that it was so dependent on my time. My time is what I had to rent out to someone else for a fee. And when you do that, it makes you feel important because you're like, okay, my time is valuable. But you also very quickly realize that it's very finite and limited, and thus your value starts to go up, which can be very tricky because you're like, I'll just charge more. I'm making more money. But there comes this point where you plateau at every price point that you charge, and you solve it by charging more money, and thus you become a little happier because you've made more money. But the same problem always comes back out into the light as you realize that you weren't really solving the problem by charging more money. You were just sweeping it under the rug. So that sort of brings me to the culmination of everything and sort of the final point in my consultation journey where I was charging $500 an hour. And I really wanted to find a solution to these problems that kept arising, like the inability to scale my own personal time and the inability to take a break, because if I took a break, I don't make money. So what those solutions are to your personal situation are obviously going to vary depending if you're a consultation service or you're a trade service like a plumber, electrician, HVAC person, or however else you sell your time. So the first solution I came to was that instead of selling my time, I could start selling the time of a team, right, of my employees. Now, this wasn't something that I was immediately doing, but this was something that I was quickly starting to understand. Instead of selling my time as a consultant, maybe I could hire 2, 3, 4 consultants under my wing and then book them out to the general population. Maybe it was at a $300 an hour rate, and then I would pay them $100 an hour and keep $200 an hour for myself. That was one possibility, and that is really how a lot of businesses scale. Like consulting businesses scale like that all the time. But there's also a really big managerial component to that I wasn't necessarily wanting to do. But if you look at an electricity company or a plumbing company or an HVAC company, for example, it's not just one plumber or one electrician or one HVAC technician, right? They usually have teams. I mean, obviously there are mom and pop shops that do this, but the really, really big companies out there are owned by a business owner who has a team of electricians that they dispatch out there, and they'll charge $200 an hour and still pay their electricians $80 an hour or $100 an hour. And that may not be a very big profit up front, but at scale and in volume, there's a lot more money to be made. And this is really the simple concept behind scaling your company, right? You as the business owner or the CEO or the COO, you can't continue continue to sell your time because you need to be running the company. And so you need to assign a dollar or hourly rate to yourself and ask yourself if it's cheaper to hire employees that can alleviate you of some of the day-to-day work so that you can then go and focus on the grander vision of your company or your product. The second solution I found to this whole conundrum was creating a scalable version of my product. And that's really what gave way to Glamp Camp, my very first glamping project that I ever launched. And then my second product, Host Camp, my 12-month Airbnb mentorship program that teaches you how to start an Airbnb business from the ground up. Now, if you want to learn more about that, you can go over to hostcamp.com and book a free call with my team. But that's not really what this point is about, just a little shameless plug there. For me, I found that instead of giving my time to one person and working with them, that I was really answering a lot of the same questions, which we'll get into that here in a little bit. But I realized instead of doing that, I could put together a curriculum and a program and education service that answers the most commonly asked questions that I was getting in the very best way possible. And I could staff up and I could hire people. And I just hired a COO to come in and run that side of the business for me, take me out of the day-to-day, give me my time back so I can focus on the vision and the growth of that program. And so now that I'm not in the weeds in the day-to-day and the admin and every single component of that business, I can really focus on growing that into a $5, $6, $7, $8, $9, $10 million company. It's just infinitely more scalable and the quality is a lot better because I found with consultations, even just giving 1 hour of my time, I couldn't really do justice teaching someone everything that I know in an hour. I couldn't do it, but I could do it in an 8 to 14 hour curriculum and let people watch that and consume it and learn it at their own pace and digest it at their own pace. So it's just really maximized my time and I just feel like it's getting pretty close to being as fully optimized as possible. And so the last solution, this is a little less tangible, but if you find yourself giving so much of your time to a trade or a service or a product or a side hustle that you're doing, figure out how to automate it, right? I was doing Airbnb for so long, I was sending my own messages, I was calling guests, I was scheduling all my cleaners, but I used different property management systems to help automate that process so that the money that I made wasn't directly tied to the amount of time that I was spending in that business because I was able to really automate a lot of that, meaning I could spend a lot less time in that business and I wasn't so tied to devoting every hour to that business. And another little solution that just hit me was instead of charging hourly, charge for the scope of work, right? You can assign hours to it, but one thing that I wish I would have done when I was consulting was rather than give someone an hour, give them a couple of hours, but really don't price it based on an hourly rate, right? If someone needed 3 hours of my service to help them figure out a problem they were having, I could just give them a price, right? $5,000 to help you meet this goal, and this goal, and it should roughly take about this amount of time. Now, of course, innately, there will be a value to that hourly time when you really think about it and divide it and everything like that. But I really think creating a scope of work and assigning a value to that is going to be better than assigning a value to your hourly time because you're valuing your experience versus the amount of time that you're spending with the client. Really, at the end of the day, it's the experience that's valuable because it's your experience that will help you do things a lot faster and help your client get to a solution a lot faster than someone just getting started. So that leads me to the last kind of section of this video, which is why I actually shut down my consultation business. Because as I said, at the very end of it, I was making $500 an hour. And if you extrapolate that and you say I was working 40 hours a week for an entire year, I could make $1 million consulting. And one might say, hey, you're crazy. Why the heck would you not want that? But there were a couple things that really led to this decision. One, as I alluded to earlier, I was answering the same question over and over and over again. How do I start a short-term rental business? Where should I do it? How do I find a property? What kind of land should I look for? Do I need utilities? And like, I answered the same 20 or 30 questions over and over and over again. And I really like helping people and working with them because every new client was a new, very custom problem, but it was still the same questions they were asking. The only thing was that one person might be in Joshua Tree, whereas someone else might be in like, I don't know, Idaho or something like that, right? But they were asking the same questions and I started feeling a little burnt out towards the end of it. And I think that's the hard thing about consulting, especially consulting full time. It's just, it's a show, it's a performance, especially if you're doing a one-on-one consultation. It's really tough because you're there, you're locked in for an hour. You're not texting, you can't watch TV while you're working. There's no relaxing. If you have to use the restroom, it's really always awkward and embarrassing to be like, I'm so sorry, I gotta go pee, right? It's even more embarrassing when you say, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I gotta poop. Oh, that never happened. I was just tied to my laptop because this was during the pandemic, right? It wasn't actual in person, but I was just looking at my screen day in, day out, and it's just not super motivating for me. But I'm really glad that I did this for well over 400 people because I was able to take the learnings and the questions and the repeat questions and formulate that into Host Camp, like a way more comprehensive, way more in-depth, way more quality product than just trying to give someone a crash course in 1 hour. I also found another interesting thing about the consultation business, and I mean, obviously people are paying me for my knowledge, so I'm happy to give pivot, but I also found that people were stealing my business plans, right? And this was always kind of like a weird thing because people were asking me really specific questions, and they would ask me for contractor lists and for realtor lists and for my draftsman. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to help because I want you to be successful. But then I remember I got a phone call from my contractor and said like, hey, do you referred me to this person? And I was like, yeah. And he said, did you know that they're trying to build 20 casita conejos with me about 1 mile away from yours? And I was like, wow. And that really kind of rubbed me the wrong way because I was here trying to help people, but all they wanted was my knowledge so that they could directly compete against me with my exact homes that I was building and my exact teams that were building them. So while the money was good, I was sort of starting to get turned off between the repeat questions and then people just trying to copy my exact blueprint. Like, I'm cool with people following in my footsteps. Like, that's what I do. I give free content on the channel for that. But the exact just carbon copy, that was something I wasn't really cool with. And so that ultimately led to the closure of my consultation business. And then lastly, like I said, it wasn't scalable. And I was tired of working a full-time job and then also doing like 5 calls a night, and I was so tired of being done with my day at 11 p.m. or 12 a.m. midnight. This happened all the time for so many months, and it just came to a head, and I was like, you know what? I gotta figure out how to scale because this isn't it. And so to really wrap everything up here, in the year after me quitting both my full-time job, that was the one I was making $110,000 at, and my consultation business where I was making $500 an hour, like the year after that, I was able to 10x my income very quickly and then eventually 20x it. And it's all because I worked really hard to scale myself, right? This comes into play in both the education side of my business, but also the real estate side. I don't buy single family acquisitions really as much these days. I just talked about in a video that is probably released at this point how I bought a 20-unit motel in New York, because that to me is a true version of scaling versus spending all my time on one property. I'm now spending a marginal amount more on this 20-unit property because I've got teams and people in place running this business for me. And so lastly, I just want to say that it's okay to sell your time, okay? Everyone's just trying to make money, and that's totally respectable. I was selling my time. I did that for a long time, and I just realized that I wanted a little bit more. So if it helps you to get to your goal to sell your time, that's fine. Just figure out a way to take yourself out of the mix, out of the operation. Can you take yourself out of your business for more than a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks on a vacation? And can your business continue to function without you? That's the question that you really got to solve for. That's all. That's what I'm still trying to figure out, all right? Everything I just said, all in theory. I'm still working on all this, right? But this has been my journey over the last year, and I always just try to come at y'all with my struggles and my hardships and things that I'm actually going through because I'm figuring it out. But I like figuring it out. It's fun. So as long as you're down to listen, I'll be here every week telling you about all the weird, crazy complications that are happening in my business life and my personal life if you want to hear about it. And that's it. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified anytime I make a video about how making $500 an hour is actually making you broke. I think that's the name of this title. I don't know. I'll figure it out. And if you want to sign up for HostCamp, go to hostcamp.com and book a free call with my team. And that's it. All right. See you guys next week, probably. I hope. Bye.